May I get a roll call, please?
Youth Commissioner Allison Bensick,
Present.
Commissioner Barry Christian,
Here.
Commissioner Sean Hughes,
Here.
Commissioner Nance Matson,
Here.
Vice Chair Scott Artis,
Present.
Chair Tara McClinton Horner.
Here. Thank you. Is there any public comment tonight for items not on the agenda?
Chair McClinton Horner, I have not received any written comments. I have no comment cards for anyone who wanted to speak this evening in person.
Thank you. And nobody online?
Let me double check that right now. I have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Are there any agenda changes tonight?
Chair McClinton Horner, there are no changes tonight to the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. We have the minutes of the last meeting from October 4th. I do have a couple of items I noticed. On number 4, Director Akita led a discussion with the OSAT's commissioners memorizing. I think that's supposed to say memorializing. And also public comment received by Alan Nawright. The correct spelling of his name is Allen Nauright. Does anybody else have any? Okay.
I had the same comment. It said memorizing the baseline for Newell. So it would make sense that it was memorializing, but I'm just guessing.
Great. Thank you, and we will make those changes. If the commission would like to approve the minutes as amended, we will not have to bring this back.
I'll move to approve the amendments, the minutes as amended.
A second.
Roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Christian,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner Matson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Artis,
Yes.
Chair McClinton Horner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our first business item, American Canyon Wetlands Restoration Plan.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, American Canyon Community. This is Erica Almond-Smithies, Public Works Director. Here tonight, we're giving our updated presentation of our American Canyon Wetlands Restoration Plan. I have ESA in the audience, Michelle Orr and Katie Dudney, to lead the conversation. We have a slideshow we'd like to share with you. Just a little background on this project. I know we provided a staff report of how we got here today. We were originally going to have an updated webinar, community outreach, as we did a year ago. But since we were so close to the open space, and instead of having another meeting that community members might need to attend to get to know, we thought it'd be a better platform to have it at the open space meeting tonight, and also combined with the Napa River Ecology Center that you'll be hearing up next. So with that, no further ado, I'd like to have ESA come up, the firm that's taking the lead on this project. And are you bringing the PowerPoint up? There we go.
Is this one live? There we go. So my name's Michelle Orr. I'm with Environmental Science Associates. I'm a wetland restoration engineer and restoration designer. I've been doing this for about...
I think you could talk a little bit closer to the micro. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I'll
We're
move
going to
this
help you adjust that podium.
do this. Okay. And I've been doing wetland restoration design for about 25, 30 years now. I want to say thank you for your service. I too serve on my city's Sustainability Commission. I appreciate what you all are doing here today. So my firm, ESA, has been working with Erica and with Allie and others on this planning. I'm also here with my colleague, Katie Dudney, who is a restoration biologist. So I'll be giving the first part of the overview, and then she's going to step in and do the second part. So we'll start with the project overview, goals and objectives, site conditions, our overall schedule. And then Katie will be presenting the preliminary conceptual designs. And we want to leave time for questions at the end as well. So just looking at the map here, in case you're not familiar with the planning area, it's outlined in purple. This whole area was historically tidal wetland, part of the Napa River wetland complex. And it was diked and drained long ago, altering the conditions there. And then while it was diked and drained, wastewater treatment plant facilities moved in. There's a landfill right in the middle of the planning area. In 2005, most of the site was reopened to the tides, and right now it's restored to natural physical processes, but it's still coming back to more natural conditions. So there's sedimentation occurring and wetland vegetation coming in over time. At the northern part of the planning area, you see the North Slough Pond labeled. So North Slough comes off the Napa River. It ends in that pond. There's very limited connection to the tides because there are some undersized culverts underneath the Bay Trail there. So one of the opportunities is improve the hydrologic connection to that pond. There's a very popular set of trails in this area that we're looking to enhance and improve with this project. And then the Bay Trail runs along the eastern boundary of the site, along Wetlands Edge Road. And then in the southern part of the site, we have the Corporation Yard, where the wastewater treatment plant operations used to be before the plant moved up to the north. And so you'll hear more about the Wetlands Ecology Center proposals for that part of the planning area, and then there's some other proposals there. So what prompted this? Members of city staff looked around and saw some issues that they would like to have addressed. There's some safety issues associated with that undersized culvert underneath the Bay Trail. Very high velocity flows there that can be a risk to people or to pets that get in the water there. There are some degraded habitats that have potential for restoration. I already mentioned the kind of degraded hydrology in the North Pond area. Some opportunity to enhance public access, address some localized erosion, and then with sea level rise, really the city is expecting for flooding and erosion to worsen over time. So this was an opportunity to make all the habitats and the public access features more resilient to climate change. And so the intent is to have any improvements be resilient as well. The city worked with our technical advisory committee to develop project goals and objectives. I'll just read the project goal here. So twofold, restore and enhance a mix of wetland habitats, and to provide nature-oriented public access, recreation, and educational opportunities along the North Slough and the lower Napa River in the city of American Canyon. And then we have a number of more specific project objectives. And this has been our overall process and high-level schedule. So we began our work with the city in the spring of 2022 and had our first public meeting then, gathered information on baseline conditions. We then did a number of feasibility studies over the fall and summer of last year and looked at a number of alternatives for improvements in the planning area. And here we are at our second public meeting, and we're working on coalescing all those feasibility studies into one overall restoration plan. We'll have a draft coming out this winter, and there will be opportunity for public comments on the draft and then finalizing it in the spring of next year. So the map on the left is from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It shows their wildlife area. So these are conserved lands in brown. And the project area is right in the middle of that, which is great from a restoration standpoint because it can connect to habitats all along the Napa River and be part of a larger patch of wetlands. And let's see, I already talked about the site conditions in some detail. For our data collection, we just did a number of studies to characterize conditions at the site. So we looked at existing cultural resources. We did a phase 1 site assessment, which is to check for potential contamination, an assessment of biological resources, and then the hydrologic resources, putting out a tide gauge in 2 locations and collecting some topography data that fed into a simple hydrodynamic model that we used to support the planning process. And these are the 3 feasibility studies that we developed listed here. So we looked at the North Slough, where it crosses the Bay Trail, so that North Pond area and the trails in that area. We looked at kayak launch, some different locations and different ways of providing a kayak launch, and then also improvements at the Corporation Yard. 17 members of the public attended the first public meeting, and then we had concurrently a survey that we put out. 45 people responded to the survey. And the survey was mostly focused on the kayak launch. There was, in general, support for the habitat restoration, support for the public access improvements, a lot of interest in a kayak launch, and we got some good information about what people were looking for in a kayak launch. And one of the key things that came through is proximity to parking, so you don't have to haul your kayak so far. So we took all of that into account in coming up with the restoration plan. So I'll turn it over to Katie to talk more about that.
Thank you, Michelle. So what we're going to present today are the recommended alternatives that came out of the feasibility study. Each of the feasibility studies had about 3 or 4 alternatives that were evaluated based on the project objectives. And we're looking to pull all of those 3 feasibility studies recommendations into one cohesive document. So we're going to look at the habitat restoration and enhancements, the public access, or the land-based public access trails, and then the water-based public access trails for the kayak launch. So for the habitat restoration and enhancement, I really have this broken into 4 areas, and we're going to go through each of these areas as a separate slide, but just kind of as an overview, looking at the intersection of North Slough with the Bay Trail. That's the number 1 point. And then the North Pond area, number 2. Number 3, the habitat area kind of along the transition between the wetlands and the uplands, and then the Corp Yard site. So number 1, Michelle mentioned, and there's a photo here, that there are some undersized culverts at this location where the Bay Trail crosses North Slough, and you can see from that picture how small they are relative to the channel. The preliminary concept here is to enlarge these to allow full tidal exchange, and this would be in the form of a box culvert, possibly a railroad car bridge, or an arch culvert, some prefabricated design that could be placed in this location. And that would increase the full tidal exchange. And so increasing full tidal exchange helps water to not be stagnant in the area, and then it also improves some of the habitat qualities we'll talk about on the next slide. So in the North Pond itself, as a result of the improved tidal connections, there are the water quality benefits that we mentioned. Another benefit that we see is that the tidal exchange will increase the tidal range and the range at which the elevations for marsh vegetation grow. So we would expect to see about 2 acres of additional marsh habitat in that ponded area that's currently mostly open water mudflat. Again, water quality increases in addition to that wetland acreage. We did look at other opportunities to enhance in this area, but there's already fairly good habitat here, other than the water quality issues. There's really good transition slope in this area and a good transition from the marsh, from the mudflat to the marsh to the uplands. So number 3, this is really kind of all along the transition zone throughout the site from the wetlands to the uplands. We're suggesting that we do some targeted invasive plant removal. There is a fair amount of fennel in the area, which you can see in the yellow flowers in this picture, as well as mustard and invasive grasses. These are things that decrease the habitat value for the species that live in the area. This habitat is really unique. A lot of areas where there are wetland fringe along the bay, there is not a very good habitat transition area, and it goes directly from wetlands straight up into a built environment, or straight up into an upland without much of a slope. And because we do have this really nice natural slope from the wetland to the uplands, it provides a lot of sea level rise resiliency and also provides an opportunity to do some enhancements in this location for habitat that aren't really available in other places in the bay. And then going down to the courtyard location, this is actually the place where there's the most opportunity for habitat. We're going to hear more about the Eco Center in the next presentation, but focusing on the habitat pieces, there is an area that's mostly upland fill on the east side of the site near Wetlands Edge Road, and that area could be converted into more of a wetland habitat with the transition slope into the uplands. There's also a little bit of opportunity at the end of what would be the spur to the kayak launch, at the end of that existing trail, where there's some pavement that could be removed for a small amount of habitat creation in that location. We would also be doing plantings or enhancements around other parts of the overflow pond that's shown in green, the light green color, and this would be a place that we could do upland enhancements. Since we haven't talked about the courtyard yet, I will note this sort of square that you see in the middle is an overflow sewage pond, and so as part of all of these designs, for right now, there would be fencing around that pond for habitat and for public to not end up having any kind of contamination issues associated with being near that wastewater overflow. It's not used very regularly, but safety is a main priority at this location. So this concept is a little farther behind, so you'll see some differences in the previous one. The city does hope at some point that wastewater overflow pond the wastewater overflow can be relocated into some other storage facility. And if that is able to happen at some point in the future, there would be an opportunity to restore the whole overflow pond into tidal wetlands. And so this phase 2 concept is based on the assumption that phase 1 happens, and sort of the restoration enhancements that can be done get done as part of that. And then during phase 2, if the sewage overflow can be removed, there would be a breach in one of the levees, which would allow that area to be opened up and restored to tidal marsh. Other aspects of phase 1 would still remain. So moving on to the public access and the land-based trail, we're talking about raising some trails for resiliency as well as adding some new public access trails. So around the North Slough Pond, there is shown in light orange color is Bay Trail. And so there's a loop around the landfill as well as around North Pond currently, and a spur out to Glass Beach. We're looking at raising the elevation of the Bay Trail in this location. It's about 1.5 feet or so to be resilient to a 10-year storm event in 2080, so a 50-year time horizon is the planning horizon we're talking about. And this is really just to allow that trail to be functional for the long term, and we'd do this in conjunction with the other earthwork that would be happening in this location. In the courtyard, we're looking at both raising trails and creating new trails. So again, the Bay Trail runs along the eastern side of this site, along Wetlands Edge Road, and as part of the Eco Center, that orange trail that is around the courtyard location is an area that could be raised for sea level rise resiliency and protection, but also used as a trail. And then as part of this project, the Brown Trail, which is existing, could be enhanced and opened to the public. So again, it would be raised to be resilient to sea level rise. The spur that goes out to the kayak launch location would be widened and raised to be accessible for emergency vehicles for that turnaround area. And there would be essentially two loops, one around the courtyard and then one around the overflow pond. And for scale, the overflow pond loop is about 0.4 of a mile. So onto the water trail access. This location is very close to the Napa River, and there are a number of existing kayak launch and boating facilities along the Napa River. They're shown here. That little side piece kind of goes on the top, doesn't fit there. So this location is in between Cuttings Wharf and Green Island boat launch, and then Brickman's Marina on the south side, and it fills a gap in the Bay Trail, and there's a lot of interest from the kayaking community in particular about this location for a kayak launch. Here's very draft concepts that we have worked on so far. It would include a turnaround area, again, for emergency vehicles, or could potentially also be used by organized groups that are dropping off kayaks. Location for kayak laydown, and potentially an area for school groups to gather as well. And that area is largely upland already. There would be some wetland enhancement, and then a boardwalk that would connect to a gangway and a dock. The details of these are still being figured out. We did get some feedback from the regulatory agencies about some materials that we could use and some redesign configurations to decrease the potential impacts associated with these features. So those are some things we're looking into right now. This is just a photo of an example of one of the kayak launches at Cuttings Wharf, and you can see this is a ADA compliant kayak launch and has facilities to help people get in and out of the water. So this dock that we're proposing would also be ADA compliant and service a variety of boats, as well as hopefully be able to be used by the Education Center for programming. So that is the overview of the concepts we're proposing, and we will be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Commissioner Christian?
Thank you. Just for full disclosure, I'm on the Technical Advisory Committee I've been meeting with Michelle and Katie,
Yes, thank you. I meant to say that.
but I represent the Napa Open Space District in that capacity. I don't represent the OSATs because originally we wanted 2 members and we couldn't have 2 members on it. So anyway, I have just a few questions. Number one, on the culvert repair. The section is titled Culvert Repair and North Pond Habitat Improvements in the language. You did show the picture of the signs that the city put up. The city put those signs up when a dog got pulled through there and drowned. But I didn't get the sense that one of the priorities for removing that or changing it was due to the safety hazard. It seemed, I mean, it's great that we're going to get more water in there, and I'm all in favor of those goals too. But that was a big part of my motivation for getting interested in this. And so I don't know if there's room for it, but if we, and maybe there's a reason we didn't want to mention it or scare anybody or attract any lawsuits or something. But to me, it was a big priority, the kayak launch and that. So for me, it was a priority, and I'm wondering if some language could be put in there that mentions that this was a hazard. And in your presentation, it did. In the PowerPoint, it mentioned that, but it wasn't in any of the description of the project. So that's that. The second one is I'm wondering if you're planning a natural bottom in the underneath the large box culvert. And I remember talking to Karen Taylor from Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I was lobbying her a few years ago about this. And she said she preferred a natural bottom. And I guess my concern is if you had the box as a complete box with a cement bottom, you put it in there, as the tide finds its own height, like it has everywhere else when there were changes made, it could be that bottom is still up high, and then you still have a drop off, or it hits that and then comes and then drops off like it is now. When it comes out of the pipe, it's dropping about 5 or 6 feet. So I would hope that we could, or dig it out and put the box really deep and then let the mud be on top of it and that, but so that we don't end up with a ledge. That would be a request.
Yeah, I think we're in absolute agreement here, because we would really like to see a natural bottom as well. So that would be a priority in the design. And we've designed both types of structures that you're talking about, like structures that don't have a bottom, so it is a natural bottom, or structures that are buried, so that then the mud comes back on top of the, any, say, concrete part of the structure that's buried beneath the mud in the bottom. But that would be our intent, is to have
That's great.
as natural of a channel as possible.
Terrific, thank you. And for the raising, for the sustainability, raising the trail, it was in the upper left-hand portion of the picture, so it's the place where you cross a little wooden bridge, and then you kind of leave this area and head up to Green Island Road, right at that juncture. So, thank you. I remember when they kind of put all that in there, it was part of the Salt Ponds Restoration Plan. And Department of Fish and Game spent a lot of time and probably a lot of money putting all that rock to reinforce that levee. That's the levee you go from that little wooden bridge to the Green Island Road. And I would have thought they would, it looks really strong, and I would have thought that they would have, considered it. And I'm just wondering about spending a bunch of money to raise that if we only get like a foot or so. And I'm thinking, it'll overtop in a seasonal event, but then it's, 90% of the time it's probably fine. And so I'm just wondering about the efficiency of spending money to raise that up if it's a foot or so. I think it was 15 years ago, and that was when they dumped all that rock along there on the outbound side to shore up that levee. So just a consideration.
I think we lost our picture, didn't we? Okay.
Do you know where that location is?
I don't. Let's see if we can.
Point that out to us, just.
Yeah, on this diagram, it would see the label wastewater treatment ponds right up there.
Mm-hmm.
It was, this is it. See proposed raised trail, upper left portion, right under North Pond Public Access. Yeah, from that point all the way up into the upper left-hand corner, goes off the screen. That goes out to the Green Island Bridge, Green Island, and the railroad bridge across the river. So that whole levee was shored up by Fish and Game as part of, because what they did was they flooded that whole area. That area had been salt ponds, and they lowered the levees out on the river to mean high tidal height. So that meant the average high tide would be right where they lowered it to. It caused some problems initially. Some boaters ran into it because they weren't expecting it. And it's like it's right underneath the water at high tide, and it shows up at low tide. But they did that, and so they had to shore up this part on the interior because now it's going to be subject to all that wave action and everything. So I don't know if we could save some money there or not.
Yeah, I think you raised a good issue there about the kind of cost-benefit return on investment for some of these items. We did talk to the city about what the design criteria are, and this is based on the trails not being flooded in about a 10-year flood event, and then having resilience to about 50 years of sea level rise. That's generally what the agencies are looking for. And then it's also who would be in a position to permit this project and also to fund this project with grant funds. It also reduces the city's ongoing maintenance costs if you can raise the trails up out of, so they're just getting flooded less frequently. You don't have to do as much resurfacing, and you don't have as much erosion and that sort of thing. So those are the benefits. We will be estimating costs along with this, so would be in a position to look in more detail along each reach of trail improvement to see if there's, some minimum threshold where it's really just not worth, the investment to raise it a small amount. So that's something I'd say that we're going to refine in this next phase of the project. And I think it's a good question.
Okay, those are good points that I hadn't considered. And then the last one was, I don't know if this would be part of your study, but as a traffic study, the front entrance to the Wetlands Ecology Center comes in off American Canyon Road. And we had a prior Public Works director who suggested that on that first block leading from the Wetlands Ecology Center, leading east down towards the Safeway, it's 2 lanes, and you're at the end of a road. It's a dead-end road. So he said, we don't need 2 lanes there. So he said you could turn one of those lanes into parking, and you could have parking. And that fronts up against the backyards of people. It's not their front yard. It's their backyard, and they have fences, and it's used really sparingly. So I didn't know if a traffic study could look at that and create some parking there.
Commissioner Christian, we've already done that study. It was part of the speed survey and traffic speed survey and recommendations provided by Fair and Peers earlier this year. We took to council, and their recommendations are consistent with reducing down to 2 lanes. So that's not part of ESA's purview on this. So, but that's something
Great.
that's already being discussed. It's already on the proposed transportation plan through MBTA that we're working on. So community transportation plan, it's in there as well. So
Like, I'm not surprised
covered.
that you're way ahead of me as usual. You're going to do it all the way down to the Safeway, or a number of blocks all the
we're
way down?
getting off topic here, but
Okay,
I think initially it's beyond. It's west of Elliott, I believe. So
Okay. And that's all the questions I had, but I want to make a comment. I think you guys are doing an outstanding job, and this is really exciting for me to see all of this. I was here when we first got the public access out there, and to get a kayak launch and to get that culvert removed and to get the Wetlands Ecology Center. It's really exciting for the city of American Canyon, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. Commissioner Mattson?
Yeah, thank you. I remember last spring being so impressed by the study on North Slough of how easy it would be to improve that area, and of course the safety issues resolved. Okay, so I am still a bit confused on if we're raising those trails, how much are they raised incrementally? It's not raising the additional 12 feet.
No. So we've looked at the elevations along the tops of all the trails out there, and it varies. Some parts are subsided quite a bit and would need to be raised by, say, up to 3 feet, maybe 4 in some areas, and then other areas it's about 1 foot. So there's a range.
Okay. And are we thinking that 30, 40 years down the line, that other existing trail on the outer levee would end up being kind of subsided and gone from tidal action, or are we thinking we're going to have both of those trails?
So the proposal is to keep both those trails, and so my understanding is that they're both well used. It may be that after the planning horizon of this study, the trail that's more landward becomes the primary trail that gets raised, and maybe the other one gets overtopped over time. But that's not a decision that we're making yet. It will reflect future values.
Great. And so you're saying we're designing this for a 10-year flood event and a 50-year sea level event, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I was thinking we were having a big difference in height, so I was thinking, well, what's going to happen with the other trails? How do we segue? That's not an issue. What will the habitat restoration look like? What will be removed? What would be added in terms of different types of plants?
Sure. So in this area in the North Pond, there's not a lot that we need to actively do. A lot of the restoration will be relatively passive. So sediment is naturally accreting in here, and the marsh is naturally expanding as a result of that in this area. With the tidal exchange being increased, we're expecting that the habitat to increase. So it would basically be what's existing there as high marsh would get broader in its band. We did look at adding fill material, but there's some regulatory permitting challenges associated with that, and you have to get the material, it has to be clean, and didn't add a lot of, habitat value. In this location, you see that kind of gradient from dark green to yellow. That's really a gradient from what would be considered a high marsh. What's out there currently is largely bulrush, like alkali bulrush. And then as it transitions upslope, you get sort of more higher marsh species, pickleweed, frankinia, saltgrass, and then it would transition into more native grassland areas. So we'd reseed that slope from the wetland area into the grasslands. We could also install some low elevation shrub cover, some like coyote brush. We did get the comment that the folks who live along Wetlands Edge Road may be concerned about large trees and shrubs as a visual barrier between them and the marsh. So we're kind of thinking lower level ground vegetation.
And that idea would continue on along Wetlands Edge.
It might look a little different there. I was just going to add on to what Katie was saying about these areas. This is a standard restoration approach used around the bay because these marsh species are very good at propagating themselves if you create the right hydrologic conditions for them. So it's really about grading to the right elevations, reintroducing the tides, and then there's plenty of seed source out there, and they will come in relatively quickly on their own. So some people call it a passive restoration, but it's the easiest kind of vegetation to reestablish. And then as you get a little higher, just above the tides and into that transition area that Katie was talking about, you have, those areas are more susceptible to weeds coming in, so that's something where you would need to put in a bit more gardening, if you will, to get natives established there. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, you were just talking about other areas.
Yeah, you had that one, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
That-
say, where to
where is
go?
it?
Where'd that map go?
I know, it's
This one right here.
That's it.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think we were envisioning active planting in the upland area. The habitat's actually pretty good. There's a pretty nice transition slope and pretty good habitat already. So it's really just kind of trying to get rid of some of those invasive plants. And in some cases, if you removed a large amount of invasive plants, you might want to put some native things in its place just to kind of help with the competition. But this is a kind of activity that the city could scale as to funding available and interest. It could be a really good community outreach project. You could get volunteers to help with it. So there's, it's an opportunity to really engage the city and use it for that purpose.
Great, thanks. I have one more question, which I think might be more operational than actually the wetlands restoration is. With the kayak launch, I love that the dock is ADA accessible. How would someone, say in a wheelchair, get their kayak to the dock? And I don't know if you guys have talked about how that might happen.
I don't know if you want to take that one or
We can share, we actually had a meeting yesterday with BCDC's trail experts.
Baywater Trail.
Baywater Trail folks, and they have guidelines for how the docks need to be for ADA accessibility. Some of that has to do with the slope of the gangway and the design of the dock itself. The logistics about how to get people out. One of the things that is fresh from that meeting is just, could we use, if we design the spur trail to be drivable, there might be opportunities for folks who needed access to drive out to that turnaround area to get some pre-authorization to do that. That way they wouldn't have to, hike with their wheel with their kayaks or whatever to the end there, and they could drive to that turnaround area and get dropped off. And then the boardwalk, the gangway, and the dock themselves would all be ADA accessible. So that's currently what we're thinking, but if Erica has anything to add.
Great, thank you. I think those were all my questions. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mattson. Commissioner Hughes?
Thanks. I had a question about raising the trails over there. What would you guys put back as a type of material? I mean, right now I think it's crushed granite, something like that.
Yeah, I think, actually, Barry gave us a very detailed breakdown of the surfaces of the various trail sections. There's a paved segment, and then a number of them are unpaved. And so crushed granite would be pretty standard. I don't recall the exact specs on it, but I would think it would be crushed granite for the parts that are currently unpaved.
Gotcha. Another question about fencing. You're talking about putting around the overflow pond. What do you guys have envisioned for that?
It's not something we've designed yet, so that is something that the BCDC trail folks that we talked to yesterday said that they had recommendations on the fence design, so we'd be looking to them. I think some of our priorities are safety, so that it's tall enough and that we're not going to have children or people climbing it or going in there for any reason, and then or pets. And then the other one would be aesthetics and making sure that the user experience along the trail itself is pleasant. But I don't know if we've spec'd out the details
Gotcha.
of that yet.
Aesthetics was my biggest concern. So nice out there. It would be a shame to see a chain link fence.
We have talked about having the fence and then having vegetation in front of it. So like the user experience would actually be more like the vegetation. You could have coyote brush or some kind of vegetation screen essentially between the person and the fence, and that also helps with keeping them a little bit separate from access perspective, as well as the aesthetics.
Gotcha. And then so keeping with the pond, is that subject to title as well? Or that's just an overflow? pond,
Currently,
right?
the overflow pond is not tidally inundated at all. It's essentially devoid of vegetation. There's a little bit of plants growing in there, but because it gets used periodically, it largely fills up with rainwater and storm events, and
Gotcha.
then it gets used as the sewage treatment, or sewage storage area
Okay.
irregularly.
My last question was about the kayak launch, which I'm pretty excited about. I do hope to see it there. Would there be any dredging, or is it also subject to tides?
So the launch would be located right in the North Slough, which is self-scouring just with the tidal flows that go in and out. Keep it about the size that it is now. It may get slightly deeper once the North Pond area gets more tidal flow, could deepen slightly. But the idea is that we're siting the kayak launch in a place that was deep enough already and stable. So there's no need for dredging there.
So is that about, I don't know if that's what I'm looking at, is about 3 feet deep?
There's a black line that runs kind of parallel to the dock, if you can see that in the graphic, and that's the mean low water line.
Okay.
So the dock can still float even just in a little bit of water, even at the lowest tides.
Looking forward to it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Artis.
Thank you for the presentation. I just had one question that hasn't been asked already, and I was wondering about the anticipated model expansion and then the courtyard habitat enhancements and the potential like future restoration of the wastewater overflow site. Are those anticipated to be used as any mitigation that may arise? And so it's like built-in mitigation, or will there be additional mitigation that may be needed beyond that already?
Yeah, excellent. That is really the intent there. I was trying to get back to the restoration slide. This area where we would be doing the habitat enhancement, we're looking for this project as a whole to be self-mitigating. So some of the, I will say regulatory agencies are not sure about the term self-mitigating, but as part of the project, there would be a balance between impacts and net benefit from a habitat perspective. So one of the things that we were looking at is the acreage that we could get out of these enhancements to offset the impacts. And the impacts associated with the project are largely from the raising of the trails. So when you raise the trails, they have to expand in width as well to keep the same slope. So there'll be a margin of wetland impacts along those trails where they get raised. We would be raising them in the direction that causes the least amount of impacts when there's opportunities to do that. And then the kayak launch itself, there'd be some impacts associated with the boardwalk and the turnaround and the gangway and the dock. In addition to the courtyard location that's shown here, where we would get some habitat creation credit for converting uplands into wetlands habitat. At the North Pond, we'd get a little bit of natural wetland accretion, which would count for us. And then at the location of the culvert itself, there's an opportunity there where the culvert, the portion of the culvert bridge will be a little narrower than what's currently filled, so we'd actually get a little bit of open water creation in that location as well. So all of those creation items are going to offset the impacts from the trail raising and the kayak launch.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Artis. It sounds like the culvert proposal is all positive for the North Slough. I was wondering if, with the increased flow, if infill could be a problem in the future and causing maintenance needs in the future, like dredging.
Yeah, so typically, tidal wetlands don't have a lot of maintenance associated with them, and you wouldn't need to dredge something like what this would become. So, like if you talk to California Department of Fish and Wildlife, they love restoring tidal wetlands because they don't have to manage a pond, they don't have to go out there and check culverts and this and that. And they don't get called by the mosquito abatement district. They don't have water quality problems. So they just tend to require minimal maintenance.
Thank you. I also noticed in one of the earlier slides there was a picture of the salt marsh mouse, and I was wondering if you have maybe an intention to plant some things that attract the habitat to support that mouse.
Yeah, so when I talk about marsh expansion both here and at the Courtyard site, it is in part to support that species, and their dominant habitat type is pickleweed, so that would be the primary species that we would expect to come in. And as Michelle mentioned, these habitats do naturally develop if you bring in the right hydrology, so we would expect the seed source to be there and that community to come in on its own. But certainly, you can speed it along by putting in little plugs in the areas where it's the right habitat. That is one of the goals of this, and in terms of the question about mitigation, the regulatory agencies are going to be looking at offsetting both impacts to wetlands and also impacts to wildlife. So ways that we can improve habitat for salt marsh harvest mouse and fish species and some of the birds that could use the marsh are a priority as well. And so that's part of the marsh expansion, and also the comments we had about the transition slope and potentially doing some of the weeding in there. One of the things that species really benefits from is having areas to go to when there's king tides or high level events. So having areas that have some amount of vegetative cover for them so that they don't get picked off by hawks. So there'd be some opportunities for adding some cover.
Wonderful, thank you. Looks like we have another question from Commissioner Mattson.
That's a very quick one. On the North Pond public access slide, I have a question for you about that. You have in the legend new elevated boardwalk, and I'm confused as to where it is, and perhaps that's on top of the culvert. And it's just oops.
It's in the southern part of the site and shouldn't be in the legend. for this
Okay,
one here.
thanks.
Sorry for the confusion.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just didn't want to go later. Well, I never asked that question.
Thank you. Thank
The
you for
new
the
gangway is also in the southern part of the site. Seeing a few things now.
Donna, can I ask one more question?
Oh, yeah, Commissioner.
It just occurred to me while we were talking about the mitigation, and you're undoubtedly aware that there were 4 sewage treatment ponds further to the west of this whole site. Does that play into any of this at all for any reason?
See if we can show those.
I know they were basically cut up and flooded
Right.
when we built the new wastewater treatment plant.
So we're not proposing to change anything there. They're doing just fine. And maybe in the future, there'll be another little square of restored wetland out there too with what's now the emergency overflow pond.
Yeah, and I will say, there's some benefit actually of those little squares right there. Though you can see it in the photo, there's an area that's raised, that's higher elevation. And so when I was talking about the refugia for the mouse, having those high spots within the marsh is really beneficial to them. So that area in itself acts as a refugia location for the mice. So we wouldn't want to lower it, for example, to make it more consistent with the marsh plain. That habitat diversity is beneficial to the species.
Or could you do anything to improve it for additional habitat as mitigation? Could you use it?
If there are some kind of more engineering focused, kind of more higher lift intrusive types of improvements you could take here. And I worked on the Napa Sonoma Salt Marsh Restoration just for the entire 10,000 acre study area. I've been doing this a while. And then for the first phase of the restoration across the river. And there were not good channels in some of those ponds. And so there's excavation to create the channels and then side casting that material to create some high areas next to the channel, which is what would establish naturally over time. You see those in natural marshes, and they support good cover habitat for the endangered ridgeways rail and then good for the mouse as well. But they're pretty expensive if the only reason you're doing them is just to create some high areas. We did consider that, but it's a pretty costly item.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Do we have any public comment?
I have no written comments. There are no commenters online, so unless there is public.
This guy looks familiar.
Yes, I'm Mark Joseph, being a citizen and guy who's been around for a long time. So I'd like to make a couple of historical comments. First, I want to do a shout out to John Wonkum, who was, I think, our second Public Works Director. He's the guy that rounded up the grant that acquired this whole site. So he deserves whatever benefits we're all seeing today. He gets the original credit for coming up with the grant and doing the work. The second historical comment is from Carl Wilcox, who used to be the Fish and Game regional manager out here, where when we were talking about everything, we were talking about vegetation and restoring this and that, and his comment was almost consistently, just breach the dike and the levee and let nature take care of itself. And some 20 years later, apparently, he was right. Which explains why he was the regional manager of Fish and Wildlife and we weren't. So those are my two historical notes. One quick comment, if we could go to the slide number 1, North Pond, whatever, going backwards. I have to do that? I'm way too lazy now. It's actually a couple more. Be that as it may, at the end at Glass Beach, there's a natural set of trails, and then there's this levee that protects the river from the old burn site or burn pit. And my comment is there a way that we can provide a trail that connects Glass Beach to the Mike's Hike and Bike, the old landfill, under the guise of having to restore that levee to protect it from sea level rise. And what the heck if you left a little DG on top? You know, it's there. So that would be my only request, to augment this report. Otherwise, it's really exciting, and I'm with Barry. This is exactly what we need to do out there, and I'm happy for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Do you want me to answer that one? The original plan didn't have scoped out new trail improvements. It was existing trails. Wish I'd known about that. Maybe we could have included it from the beginning. I don't know if that's something that we could add, but it's also not on city property. It would be asking Fish and Wildlife to allow us to do the work. And that's kind of, we're staying in the premise of the city jurisdiction on this, because it's already not contentious, but difficult with multiple partners along the main drag from the trailhead parking lot, that we have to get permission from Fish and Wildlife, as well as the Napa County Waste Management Authority. So I like it.
I just wanted to add, we did put a contact here for the city if anybody in the public watches this later or, wants to provide feedback or comments. If you reach out to Rebecca Hendricks, hopefully that message will get back to us and we can incorporate it.
Thank you. Okay, our next item of business is a Napa River Ecology Center at American Canyon Wetlands. I did not know it did
Why
that.
do I think of a Disney movie? There's a scene in there that's just like this. Thank you, Chairman Clinton Horner, and OSAT's Commission and members of the public. I'm Brent Cooper, Community Development Director. Pleased to introduce for you the Napa River Ecology Center at the Corporation Yard. Of course, an ecology center is an idea that has been hoped for many years. I think it may go back. Of course, we have historians here, so I'm really worried now I'm going to get my facts wrong. But I think going back as far as 2011, 2012, when there was a visioning session for Clark Ranch, the idea of really enhancing our wetlands and activities related to the environment for a host of great reasons, mainly children, and introducing them to environmental stewardship came about. Of course, over the years, I think some people here in the room and others and partners were part of a steering committee that helped create the Clark Ranch Master Plan, where among the many wonderful amenities is an idea of an ecological center. Of course, there was no funding for the Clark Ranch Master Plan, and there are so many great ideas and uses out there. It's a little crowded, and so we have this great opportunity site at the Corp Yard. And fortunately, recently, with the city acquisition of the former Napa Junction Elementary School, it really has given life to the idea of here's a feasible way of being able to relocate this Corporation Yard, which opens up 3 to 5 acres of open space right there on our waterfront for an ecological center that, by the way, is largely funded by another organization. So there's a lot of great ideas here. And with that brief introduction, I wanted to turn it over to Janelle Selleck, American Canyon Parks and Community Parks Foundation, ACCPF. They have, of course, been talking to the City Council about this for several years. 2 years ago, there was a negotiating agreement, and then just last September, a term sheet. So they're kind of moving along, and I suspect a lot of what is built into this ecology center fulfills the terms of the term sheet. So I think we're all loaded up and ready to go, and ready to turn it over to you for your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. See if I can do the fancy thing that Brent can do by making this go up and down. Actually, I think it's fine. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. All right, well, welcome. I'm Janelle Selleck, Executive Director of the Parks Foundation. Thank you for having me here tonight and our group. We're really excited to be able to share our concept plans as well as some of the progress we've made over the past 12 to 18 months. Joined here tonight by our board president, Rafi Beloyan, as well as a couple members of our project team who you'll hear from, Naveen with RIM Architects, as well as Brian, who's our project manager with Pound Management. And also want to give a shout out to Pam, because a lot of the programs that we've been doing that we envision moving into the center and we envision being able to grow have really started through partnership with the environmental services team. And so we really enjoy getting kids out to wetlands for hands-on learning. It's been quite an area of growth, and there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around it. So we're excited to be here tonight. I'm going to introduce the foundation, which is probably old news to everybody, but I'll do a quick little overview. So the foundation's a 501c3 nonprofit. We're going on 9 years old now. We started as a grassroots community organization and grew to be a nonprofit that provides year-round programming in the community. We've really looked at how we can fill service gaps related to environmental education. And really what we do now is we go around and we provide a lot of watershed, wildlife, and environmental education programs for schools, communities, while also really focusing on connecting community and outdoors and nature together. All of that, we hope, will develop future environmental stewards and really take the values that our community holds related to wildlife and nature and outdoors and help enhance them. So we want to provide a way to help the community connect even more to the outdoors. We have, the project is managed by a professional set of team members. Many of those are here tonight. Our RIM is our lead architect, who's been with us for over a year now. We recently began working with Pound Management, and they've been huge in helping us develop the project budget. RHAA is our landscape engineer, RSA Plus civil, and CFA structural engineers. So feel really blessed to work with this incredible team. The mission of the Ecology Center is that it's a community-based environmental center. We really look at how we can harness our diverse community to further the conservation movement. Given that it has possibly the most perfect location that you could ask for in an environmental center, we believe that this is a regional draw. In fact, we do get on a regular basis asks from throughout not just Napa County, but other counties as well, to bring students and bring community members here for environmental education. And we see that even just in the community-based hikes and activities that we do. We'll get people anywhere 90 minutes to 2 hours surrounding us, and people come to this location. Equitable access to education, art, and science. And I want to take a moment and just comment, because I don't think it's anywhere else in the slides, but we have done quite a bit of community outreach over the past year, really robust outreach into the community, because one of the things we wanted to do early on was here, if this site's available and this site's going to be repurposed, what does the community want out of it? It's not what we want. It's where are the service gaps? Where are the needs? How does the community want to use this space? How do they feel like they can connect with it? And so the three main areas that we've really heard and we've honed in on from all of this outreach is education, first and foremost. That's always the first one. Then after that, community-based events and activities. And then third is actually opportunities for environmental art. So we have in the plan and what we're calling an environmental artist workshop, and there's some really neat opportunities to work with partners and create sustainable art and bring the community out to connect with nature in that way. We work with a lot of program partners year-round. There's a few listed here. There's more even that are on here, and they're always rapidly growing. We bring on new partners. In fact, one that's not on here is we have a new partnership with Point Blue. They run a really great program called the STRAW program. It gets kids into wetlands for restoration projects, and so we have some grant funding that's going to allow us to work with them for a student and community-led restoration project. And Naveen, you want me to turn it over to you? Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Naveen Mathur, California architect from RIM Architects. Before we get to the design goals, just a general statement I need to make tonight. I've been working in the Bay Area for about 25 years with RIM, and we work with a lot of clients. And the very first meeting that we have with the client involves us making sure the clients understand what they need. But with Janelle and the team, it was the other way around. When we first met them, these goals were in front of us. So they made it clear that we have to use all the existing site elements to the extent possible, which is the best sustainable aspect of design. We have to be eco-friendly. We need a lot of outdoor access. Parking needs to be grouped together. We have to screen view from the public. We have to also take advantage of the incredible wetlands that we have in the back. We need an outdoor deck for the community. So there was a lot of community-based ideas and goals. So we really started with this in front of us. How much time do I have for this presentation? Because we can really go on about the design, but I want to be cognizant of.
Well, it's up to the chair.
As much time as you want.
Okay, thank you.
30 minutes.
Just a quick location map. Everybody knows where the site is, 205 Wetlands Edge Road on the American Canyon Road. Just a quick overview of the site. It's a residential neighborhood on one side, then our site is sandwiched between the road and the wetlands on the other side. So we were also very careful with what the residents want. So in our community outreach, there were several questions on how the neighbors will react to our design. Just a quick photograph of the existing courtyard building, a 2-story masonry structure, more industrial looking site, and our goal was to turn that into a usable ecology center. In the proposed site plan, really, as you can see, we are trying to keep a lot of existing features and existing elements intact, starting with the existing driveway. So the idea is that keep the existing curb cut in place. We're not creating any further disruptions in the traffic flow. Meander the driveway into the site so that you see the ecology center in the background, and there's a little bit of mystery before you get to it. Parking in the front, which will contain the accessible parking, path of travel, etc. And then a public walkway that takes you into the building, which also connects to the sidewalk and the street, along with demo wetland gardens and a little bridge, just trying to create a more natural environment. And in order to utilize the beautiful views of the wetland, the existing pump house building, which is right behind the building.
If you're not close to the mic, we can't catch the stream.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So the existing pump house building, which was right behind, which the city would want to keep, for the purposes of pumping the extra water, we are planning to install an outdoor observation deck with access from within the Eco Center building. So these are some great ideas to make use of all the existing elements on the site and not do a lot of new construction, so to speak. The generator that's right behind the pump house building will be screened from public view, still providing access to public works when they need it. And then everything in the rear is more outdoors activities where you have a maker space, which will most likely be a simple structure where artists can go and create artwork. There's a flexible space that can be used for farmers market or any other activities that can occur in that open area. And then the existing berm is utilized more in a landscape fashion where there are walkways and areas where you can sit and benches and public areas. Is there anything you want to add, Janelle? I can keep rambling.
I'll just mention that we wanted to incorporate the existing paths that surround the site and work with the city to add an existing public access, not just to the site as an education center, but also to open up new pathways for the community, knowing that it's one of the things that people enjoy the most about the wetlands is just getting out and walking, bike riding. So as you saw from ESA's slides, this path surrounding the ecology center and leading into the wastewater overflow would all be part of the public access.
Just a quick note that the city has agreed to create an overflow parking, which is not part of the property, but the idea is that the future kayak launch can use this overflow parking, which can also be used by the ecology center parking needs if that situation arises. So we are creating a situation where if you're parked in the overflow parking, there's safe pedestrian way into the eco center. Just a quick floor plan idea of the existing building. So the first floor will all be activities. That's planned by the foundation. Instead of creating several zones and several areas for activities, our initial idea was to have one big open space that connects the outdoors and the indoors. So we are taking all the existing garage doors that's in the courtyard building and adding glazing to it. So even when they're pulled down to protect from the elements, they still give you the connection to the outdoor. And then we are creating a new opening in the back that provides access to the rear. Storage areas, all gender restrooms for people visiting, a reception desk in the center. Behind that can be the branding wall that contains information about the donors, etc. A lot of storage, which is a classroom-style storage to cater to all the activities. And then most of the furniture in the space is flexible. There are rolling tables, there are activity areas that can be moved around, there's a sink for children to use, etc. And then to be considerate to accessibility, we are proposing to add an elevator in the building to take to the second level because there's none at the moment. And mainly because from the second level is also the access to the observation deck that is sitting on top of the pump house. So either you can go inside the building, main entry, take the elevator and go up to the observation deck, or you can use some existing exterior stairs. As you can see, we are creating a connection back there to the observation desk. So we are trying to provide access to the community even during off hours. So if you're not able to enter into the building, you can still go up to the observation deck. And the second floor is office area for the foundation. There's a common multi-purpose room on the second level that can be used by the community, hence a little pantry on the side, all gender restrooms, storage, and the elevator. And then we got our artists at work, just to give you a quick three-dimensional visualization of what this will look like. A lot of activities in the front and landscaping. There are solar pavilions. There's the pine cone for children to use. There are fire pits, areas of landscaping where environmental education can occur. There's an entry canopy that draws people into the main entry. To be sustainable, we're proposing bamboo cladding to the building to change the appearance from a courtyard building to a more inviting eco-center building. There's a green wall by the existing stair. We are trying to do a rainwater capture, to be sustainable. So this view shows pretty much all of that. There will be PV on the pavilion to provide local photovoltaic power. And then another view from the other side, which shows the rear of the activity area. There you can see the flexible area. Currently, we're just showing some farmers market type of arrangement, but that can really be anything. It can be an exhibition or an outdoor activity that can occur. More landscaping. That's the berm in the rear that contains a meandering walkway for people to enjoy. And then there's an access that goes around the site, which will also be available for public to go around. Just a few other views. Wondering if you want to add anything.
So, since Naveen was talking about the deck, I have to give a shout out to Fran Lemos because, I don't know, a year ago when we first started talking about this, Fran was here or something, and she said, well, you better have a deck that everyone can sit on in the back and take a look at the wetlands. So there's Fran's deck, Fran. But I mean, she was really onto something, because one of the things that you can see when you're out there, especially if you go up on the stairs and you're about the height that the deck would be, is you have a tremendous opportunity for citizen science related to flood protection and sea level rise. I mean, you have a near 180 plus degree view of the surrounding watershed. And so we actually really see that deck will serve a purpose. I mean, beyond being astounded by the views and the beauty of it all, there's a real opportunity for observation as the wetlands change, related to tidal flows and all of that. So it's a really interesting piece of the project that we're all really excited about. I think that's it. The other thing Naveen touched on was how important the green elements are, and we're really viewing each of those as an opportunity to tell a story and incorporate the community into what it means to have green elements, not only at this site, but at their own home. And so we hope that some of these things that we have incorporated, people will be able to learn more about and maybe be inspired to either change some of their own behavior related to sustainability or incorporate more green elements into their own residence.
Thank you, Janelle. Rest is really all visualization of the campus and the structure. So just a street view with all the activity in the front, which includes tea gardens and pine cones and pavilions with a lot of landscaping and a lot of greenery, a lot of space for classroom type of atmosphere in the front. That was the new canopy that we are proposing to add, just to give the building a sense of identity to the entry, and also to make it look more inviting. That's the green wall by the existing stair that we're proposing. You can see the outdoor deck in the back. And that was that bamboo cladding that I was talking about that gives more of a sustainable design feel to the exterior, including the entry canopy that will all be used by recycled wood material. Just the front view of the building. And these are just some images up close. That's the reception desk and the donor wall in the back. On the other side is all open activity area. We are proposing industrial type fans just to keep the air circulation there. Another view of the reception desk and the activity area in the back. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. What an honor it is to have the Executive Director and President of ACCPF here with us tonight. Thank you.
I was remiss in introducing one of our other board members, who Sean Hughes is here.
I was wondering if this building is going to be LEED certified?
We did discuss that. We could, because we already have all the elements you would need for a LEED certification. We haven't taken it to the level where we're doing the credits yet, but it is in the discussion arena at the moment.
Is it a big cost to do that?
There is cost involved, so it's the foundation's decision whether they want us to do that or not. And it's also sometimes involves having another consultant on board, which has additional cost. But to be honest with you, we are already so sustainable in our design that at least the certification level will be easy to achieve, is what we feel.
Great, thank you. All right, Commissioner Artis?
Thank you for that. It's great to see this coming to, and moving forward, coming to fruition. I did have a couple of questions. As it does move forward, I haven't really seen in terms of like design, what is outside lighting going to look like, or have those elements been considered, including like the needs for adjacent wildlife in the wetlands, and their habitat, for hunting, roosting, nesting, all of those kinds of things that could be impacted by additional lighting requirements, especially for hours of operations that I saw on the thing could extend to, say, 10 p.m. or 6 to 10 p.m. So like light pollution, noise pollution in terms of wildlife, habitat, and then also the adjacent, right across the street, houses, and then the adjacent neighborhoods.
Commissioner Artis, this is Brent Cooper. We have a development standard that requires buildings to have their light directed so that it stays on site and avoids spillover into surrounding properties. So that might address some of the issues you have with nighttime lighting in the near the vicinity of the wetlands and the neighbors.
Potentially, yes, but there's also, say, two-story houses with bedrooms on second floors, and so, I still think that there could be potential lighting issues if it's not taken into consideration or looked at carefully, especially if there's hours of operations that extend to 10 p.m. or later, that those lights would be on, or potentially do they need to be on all the time throughout the night for security or safety reasons that are there as well. And I think that also, I thought I heard maybe somebody, maybe you said that there would be like observation deck off hours. And so, yeah, what does that mean in terms of opportunity and openness? Is the site just perpetually open? The same with parking, having open lots, observation decks that are kind of off, visible, incur a lot of potential illicit activities. And so is parking is going to be closed at a certain time, or does that stay open and allow people to potentially go in there at any time of the evening or early mornings?
So really good questions, and the lighting issue has definitely come up, and it's on everyone's minds. And one of the things that RIM is doing is they're looking at what is part of the next phase of the design process, how we make sure that we're incorporating wildlife-friendly, environmentally friendly lighting, low-impact lighting. So that's definitely on everyone's minds because we want to make sure that we're not doing anything, especially with it being in the Pacific Flyway Zone.
That's correct.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything that's going to impact any kind of migration or the animals. So definitely part of the next design phase of the design process is when we get into those specifics with the lighting. Yeah. As far as security and fencing goes, our entire footprint will be fenced in and secure. We're still working on the designs of what those fences are going to be like, because it's a challenge to provide fencing that's secure but also preserves the view shed, and as Commissioner Hughes mentioned earlier, you want it to be aesthetically pleasing. So we're working on some of the design of that, but there's kind of like an intricate network of fencing involved in the interior of the project. In the east-facing side, so facing the residence side, which is what we're sort of calling the front courtyard area, which is the primary education area. That entire site is fenced for security for children. Mm-hmm. So we want them, when they come, we want them to be able to explore and have free reign of that front area, but we don't want them running out in the street, and we don't want them running out toward the parking lot. So that's its own set of fencing, and then we have additional fencing surrounding the entire footprint, as well as some areas in the back. So the design of the fencing is still being worked out, but security is definitely on everyone's minds. The other piece that has come up, I think you mentioned, as far as access to the site as a whole. Mm-hmm. Since the city will retain control of the front entry area and the gates, that's part of an ongoing conversation with the city, is that how that will continue to be managed. And I know they're doing some work around community access to the recycled water areas and how that continues to be accessible. So some of these things are, still to unfold, but definitely in consideration. And we have, to your point, we have heard from the residents that live right there that they're very concerned about it, potentially being open in the evenings to people. So, I think through the next phases and part of community outreach, we'll make sure that those addressed and through partnership with the city as well.
Got it. Excellent. Yeah, because I see a lot of traffic at night that goes into the current parking lot on there, and I'm concerned that this could also invite other activities, especially on West American Canyon Road that does have a problem with speed at night and in evenings, and
Yeah.
cars that actually will race up and down that road. And if we have an open parking lot that is not gated or closed, that could potentially invite or direct people straight down there, which is just a straight, easy access as there is right now. And I do see, other cars rolling in, making their quick stops and then leaving, because that is definitely a known destination for those kinds of activities. And so definitely that's a concern of how that might affect just general safety and security for those, for the homeowners there as well, so.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, Erica, or if anyone has any, Brandon, if you want to jump in on any of that, feel free. As far as the entryway, the main entryway to the site once we move in. Feel free.
We'll have to address that when we get there at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But, and as far as the residents in the area, one of the primary goals of the project, aside from the security, but is also to just improve the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything we do, we're designing with Viewshed in mind, with beautifying it for the residences as well.
Excellent. And last question is also another parking question, but is that flex space, is that a loop that could be used for busing to ensure bus-friendly opportunities?
It is also a fire access, so it'll act as a fire access around the site.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there are buses that are coming in, they can go through the parking lot and out. So in a way, you're correct. It's like a loop, so buses can enter and exit.
Yeah, because that's a big component of a lot of outdoor education programs, especially those that are busing in, maybe even multiple buses, as well as the community, that the parking lot could be full or not having easy bus access for the kids, and then the bus to be able to turn around. So firsthand experience has shown that would be a big plus component that could drive additional traffic from many sites, as Janelle had mentioned, coming from all different areas. And it could be an incredible hub for kids that are in areas that do not have access to these kinds of sites.
This is Rafi Beloyan with ACCPF. Just a clarification, though. Our current plan, though, is that circular area towards the rear would be bollarded to prevent cars from just generally going in there. But if a bus was coming in, we would know that, and then we would open it up. Also, same with for fire access. Fire would have the Knox box key if they had to make the loop around. But we want to keep cars out of there so people can walk freely in the back area.
Excellent.
And Commissioner, just a quick clarification on the outdoor deck that I may have mentioned. Intent was not to have it open all the time to the public, but have it available for community use on a controlled basis.
I see.
So somebody would book it, and you can have an event there. They will go through the foundation. They will have the right access. And same thing is true with the second floor multi-purpose room. It's just not free for all access, but a controlled public access.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes.
Could you guys touch more on the rooftop bar that's going to be going in? No, this is great, obviously. I'm a fan. Is there any consideration, American Canyon has some pretty fierce winds. Any consideration for the impinging winds to kind of calm them down and make it just more usable space year-round?
I mean, is that a real question? Or
Thanks, man.
It's very real.
No, I mean, like a berm
I was going to say the wind has been in our discussions, and that's primarily why all the outdoor activities in the rear. And we are trying to create berms, create the makerspace and the screening, so there's a contained area. So in a way, you're right. I mean, the whole openness and the winds in the city will be a consideration going forward
Yeah,
as
they
a
always
design.
are. Okay, cool. Thanks. That was my question.
Commissioner Bensick.
First, I just wanted to say thank you. As a high school student here at American Canyon, I have some firsthand experience on how like hands-on and immersive learning can really benefit students' education. So I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to see this plan advancing, and I think it's going to be great, not just for educational purposes, but also for community purposes. And forgive me if I missed this, but I wanted to ask about like solar panels on the roof, maybe? Did you guys discuss that?
Currently in the design, we have it over the outdoor pavilion.
Oh.
The thing about solar panels, and we get this question all the time from the clients, is there's what is called as the return on investment. So if you're putting solar panels and you're not getting the power that matches how much you have invested over a period of time, then economically they don't work. But sometimes putting on small patches like the pavilion, that solar panel can serve the pavilion needs. So the power can just go right into the pavilion. You can have outlets or you can design a fire pit that's controlled by the power. So in a limited way. But when we looked at the roof of the courtyard, it wasn't large enough for us to get that benefit, but doesn't mean that we won't explore it again.
Mm-hmm. And then if not solar panels on the roof, I was also gonna ask like maybe if you guys considered like a lighter colored roof for like passive cooling instead for summertime maybe.
Good points. Are you available to work with us on the team? Those are extremely good things that we will be considering going in the next phase, and that's what the design team will talk about in our internal design meetings. But that's a great point.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you. Commissioner Christian.
I thank you. It looks great. I had the same question that Sean Hughes had about the wind, because that if you were doing anything to mitigate the wind. I understand that there's a view shed out here. It looks fairly open. I don't know if that's a function of it being a new development, because a lot of times you go into an old neighborhood and all the trees have grown up and the character changes because now you've got all this shade and big trees. But even if you had something in one of the corners, if I had a business in American Canyon and a cafe and I wanted to put it outside, I would definitely screen it. It doesn't have to be tall trees. It could be a royal willow that don't grow too high, but they grow into bunches. And it will block the view a little bit. But I have hedges on both sides of my house, my property, and the winds will blow up the street. American Canyon does get the predominant summer winds, more than Napa, and Napa's more than Yountville. And you get up to St. Helena, and there's no wind. It's just really nice and warm. But I've noticed that the wind is blocked if you sit behind the trees, but also if you're on the other side of it where the wind is coming from, the wind's blocked, because wind comes and it'll create a cushion right by the obstacle, the trees, and the oncoming wind will go up and over the whole thing. So it actually calms the wind on both sides of whatever you plant. And if you had just somewhere in a little corner where you had a semicircle, maybe 10 yards, someplace where people can get out of the wind and maybe get some shade too. If I go out to the wetlands now on my bike, there's some benches out there, but there's not any place where I'm really going to sit for very long, especially if it's windy. But if there's a spot where you sit down and all of a sudden you're out of the wind, and it doesn't cost you a lot to do it. It's the plants, maybe the maintenance of it. So with that much room, I would hope that maybe you could find one little spot to do some wind mitigation. And then if it proved popular, you might want to expand it at that point and put more to just calm the place down. And I realize on the front, you're going to get the wind blocked because the wind's coming from the west. So the front of your pavilion, the front of your building looks like that's probably going to be calm from the wind there.
I'll jump in real quick. Yeah, it's a really good point, Barry, and it's something that anyone who goes to wetlands with any regularity realize. I mean, it can make or break your experience, the wind. So there are actually, all jokes aside, there are all mitigation measures in here for wind. One is the trees. Actually, right now the site has, I think, 1 tree or maybe 2. So we are proposing quite a few additional trees, and I think this is the plan. Although Naveen would know, we had to change it slightly based on our application. In the overflow parking. So we do have, we do, the trees that you see in the site here, or in the image here, are actual new trees that would be planted. And the other thing is that we have areas that, in the plan, where we tried to create small gathering areas. So one is in and around the makerspace / environmental artist workshop area, where you see right now that sort of greenish rooftop. That area is there's a courtyard area surrounding it, so there's opportunities to get out of the wind when you're in that area. In addition, one of the primary reasons we in the plan are leaving the berm the way it is partly for sea level rise, but also partly because it does provide some protection from wind as well. So there are some elements in it, even if it's not immediately obvious. And we did go so far as to even talk about, could we incorporate screening of some sort? And I wouldn't say it's totally off the table. It's really just a function of cost and preserving the view shed. So we're trying to evaluate all those things as we move forward with it. So I don't think it's off the table at all. Part of this, I feel like once we move into the site and we develop it and we get a feel for what it's like out there on a daily basis, some of those pieces might evolve over time as well.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of trees are these predominantly that are pictured?
Just to add to what Janelle said, and I'll get to your question, Commissioner, we have a renowned landscape firm as part of our team, RHAA, and they have experience designing a lot of outdoor areas, including parks and garden areas. So we haven't really gotten to that level yet, but once we have them involved in the actual design, these are concept images, obviously. That's when we will discuss with them these little screening areas where you can go if it's very windy, shades, etc., including the trees. So there is it's called the East Bay Landscape Book, is what we generally call it, and that's what most jurisdictions require us to use in specifying the trees. And they have given us a list of trees. Obviously, I don't remember, but it'll be selected from that book that belongs to this region.
Okay, American Canyon has one of those books, and they put Chinese elms out at the wetlands. And I have a friend who's a biologist, and she made some recommendations for all native trees. And when she found out we planted Chinese elm, she hit the roof. I don't know, just because it's going to be an ecological center. Maybe if you leaned more towards at least some native trees, just for bragging rights, I guess. And then, final thing, I've been lobbying Janelle for this, so she won't be surprised. But if you do find a way that you could hang a screen from the back of that building and have a place where you can view outdoor films, there was a Napa Film Festival that came down here. They even had a film inside the Gaia. Mark will remember that. There was some high school, or this was before the high school. They had one in the Gaia. They did a couple films in there. But he set up out at Cartledge and Brown Winery off of Green Island Road, and he hung a screen down from the side of the building. And I still remember those films. They were just amazing films. There was one about a guy riding a horseback all across Mongolia to Russia, and the photography was incredible. So in terms of outdoor stuff, Vallejo has a Visions of the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. They come and they get their stuff from the South Yuba River Citizens League, which does its own outdoor film festival in Nevada, in I think Reno, Nevada, every year. And there's a San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival at Fort Mason every year now. And people from all over the world submit films, and they have student films. And film is such a really powerful medium, and it's artistic too. So it can be both art and environmental and educational. So there's a lot of opportunity there, I feel. And I understand the neighbors might not like, at night having a big to do, but you could downsize it. You don't have to make it really loud. I just think it's an opportunity. And so if during your planning you think about that and set it up so that it's possible, then maybe that would be maybe that would help facilitate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. Commissioner Mattson.
Thanks. This is great. We've been talking about this for a long time, and it really helps to see your ideas down on paper here. I had a few kind of scattered questions. One is, I saw in the term sheet the idea of possibly subleasing to, say, a kayak company or whatever. How would you incorporate that into the space? And maybe it's too future out there. So if it is, you can say, later. But I wondered also, let me just give you all my questions, then you can play with them. In terms of the space, the interior space, I wondered if you had enough water sources for, say, if you're doing special labs, water labs, things that require more mess. And then perhaps this is still a pretty early on floor plan, but I just wondered about that and whether you needed some sort of like little kitchen area, so you have heat sources, how to play with that. Also, I wanted to ask about the second floor. Are those walls where they are now, or are those future walls? And I can play these back for you. And I wanted to talk to you about the maker space is the last question I had. So, and also I was just concerned about if you have all those glass doors down and you have an emergency, do you have enough egress? Will people know how to open those big glass doors to get out?
I can start from the reverse. I can do the garage doors. They will be designed by code, which means that every garage door will have a break open door in them. So if there's a fire, you just run and exit through. In addition to that, we have a exit rear door, as you can see from that shot, which is also helping you exit in fire circumstances. And from the second floor, we have 2 exits on either side with 2 existing stairs, so you exit from there. So all that will be designed by exiting code of California. Do you want to take the next one?
Sure, and then you were asking about, she was asking about the walls upstairs, so those are new in the
Those are new walls.
That's a new design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the idea with the second floor is 3/4 of the space is foundation offices, and the other 1/4 is available as a multi-purpose room with a kitchenette.
But it does have a kitchenette. Okay, there it is.
And an all-gender restroom and a storage, and that's where you will. That's also where you will come up using the elevator, and then you go outside. That will connect you to the observation deck. So common space that serves you all those activities, and the remaining is all foundation offices.
Okay.
And then you had asked about sort of the downstairs education area. That as well, we do have in the plan right now. We have essentially a stainless steel countertop sink area with a water sink area. So for doing science experiments and things like that. And that's about probably as far as we've gotten with the design. But I would love to pick your brain about how we can make sure that we've incorporated everything we need to for.
I know a retired chemistry teacher who'd love to talk to you about that. She would have so much fun.
Fantastic. I need to connect you with Joy, and we go out there and you guys could just go crazy. And because the kids are having so much fun now. We're pulling water out of the wetlands and they're analyzing it and looking at microscopes. I mean, it's just been so much fun. So we'll have so much more opportunity there. So yeah, it's in the design right now, but it's pretty basic. So what was the other?
Oh, and so I wanted to ask about if you were subleasing to, say, a kayak company or bike tour company or something, how that would fit into the site or the buildings.
Yeah, really good question. So that I would definitely say it's early for that, but right now our application to the city references this plan, and the only new space of any sort in this plan is the Environmental Artist Workshop, which will be a modular space. So right now, those spaces, the Ecology Center building and the modular space, would be the only spaces that could be subleased as far as a building goes. But we could, if we had somebody that wanted to manage the garden for us, and somebody came forward and said, hey, we could sublease this from you and you could do it, that could be on the table as well. But for as far as new space, like if somebody came in and wanted to run a kayak launch company, they would either, at this point, have to work in with what we have. We have no plans right now to go to the city and add new structures other than what's in this plan.
Okay. And I want to ask you about the makerspace. Right now, it looks like a pretty solid block. I'm assuming it will have some sort of windows and things to it. Now, can we come down and use the arc welder as citizens? How are you thinking about using that space? Is it mostly invited artists or?
Yeah, so the program plan on that will definitely be defined as we get farther along, but we wanted to serve the community first and foremost. So it will be open to the community at specified hours, whether it's us operating it or whether we're contracting with another organization that's going to operate it for us. It will definitely be available to the community at specified hours and rentable and all of that.
Well, I'm just thinking about those of us who went to college with art centers we could go and play and do things with. It'd be great to have that accessibility to us.
Yeah, and it's envisioned to be indoor outdoor. So the idea is that really, the Ecology Center space, as you can see on the inside, it's modular and open, but that's where the education is really going to be. But the Makerspace Environmental Artist Workshop is where you can really get messy and have fun and explore all those different mediums. And we hope that people will be able to come and use repurposed materials and create environmental sculpture and things like that could either then be on display at this site or throughout the rest of the community.
Sounds great. And I want to kind of echo Barry's idea of an outdoor film festival, though I don't know with our American Canadian winds and chilly summer evenings whether that would work, but having some way to have community gatherings there would be great, since we had planned kind of an amphitheater at Clark Ranch, and that I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I love the wandering paths, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, the view's really pretty up there, and yeah, the wind. Some points. Sometimes I go and I imagine what our community-facing website will look like and all that, and I imagine that it's going to have a wind monitor as well as a tide monitor, like first and foremost, right there on the homepage, like. Check the tide before you come and check the winds before you plan your event here.
Yeah.
But we hope that what the plans that we've made here will help alleviate some of that, and then we'll go from there and see what else needs to be added.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. I have a few more questions. I got spurred by some of their comments. I'd like to echo what Barry was saying about using the East Bay Mud book. That's the one you're referring to, right? Great book, but it is like Mediterranean, like drought tolerant, and not necessarily native. So I would like to echo what Barry was saying, and support native species out there. Also, have you thought about parking for the trailer?
Very good question. So yes, at some point we'll be taking it away from Pam's backyard, and yeah, we will be moving it out to the site. In the interim, when we move in, we'll be putting it actually in the garage when construction happens. Yes, we're looking. The idea that we have right now is a modular aftermarket shed, basically, to protect it. Yeah.
Do you also have ample storage for some of the large foundation items?
We do have, there's quite a bit of storage actually upstairs and along the walls. Yeah, maybe there's a slide. This is the upstairs. So we have, we have storage rooms there, and then for day-to-day education and community-based activities, we have, this is the first floor, right? Yeah, we have storage. You can see that kind of darker orange rectangular area of storage. And then we also have storage shelves built all the way up the walls. So we're utilizing as much of the wall space as we can, especially since it's a high ceiling. So, and then if we need to, we can keep our existing storage unit as well over at the food pantry. So storage, it's interesting. It's a good sized building, and it's a lot more storage than we have ever had, but we also know that once we move in, it'll fill up. So we're looking at maximizing all the available space that we can for it.
Sounds good. And on the subject of wind, I was thinking that maybe a wind turbine to model green energy production could be good out there. I don't know. There's always like the bird stuff. Isn't that just the tall ones though? I don't know. That's
See.
yeah, like a small one. Yeah.
We actually do have a demonstration wind turbine in the plan up by the berm, and I don't know if you can see it on here, but it's funny that you asked that because I met with Marin Clean Energy. They came and walked the site with us.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about having a wind turbine of some sort that would work. It has to work with the wildlife out there. And they said, oh, there's all sorts of different styles you can use. I mean, you can actually, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually buy a wind turbine on Amazon. If anyone wants one for your backyard, you can go home and order. It'll be here tomorrow. But so my point is that they make all sizes. So from what he described, there's so many different ways you could incorporate that from an educational perspective. He said, if sky's the limit with funding and you want to have wind turbines that that power the whole building, you could do that. But he said, or if you want something more low profile and that will really reach people and help them understand the direct connection between wind and energy, he said, choose something smaller and have them plug their phones into it. And kids will never forget how their phone got charged. So, it's those kind of pieces that could be really fun storytelling elements of the project. So we definitely want to capitalize on the wind as much as we can.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Go ahead.
So for graduation, we had solar beanies, and you could do solar beanies. They're really cool. It's just a little PV with
Oh, how cool. Very cool. Amazon?
Yeah, right. We had Amazon back then. Yes.
Of course you did.
And electric car charging station.
Yes, it's in the parking lot, right? Go back. I mean, do you remember where that is?
We kind of added all that in the big list. I didn't mean to read it, but there's the local Cal Green requirements. For this type of renovation and investment. They will require us to provide what is called as a EVCS, EV charging stations, and EV capable parking stalls, meaning all the conduiting are there for future EV. So all that will be part of the design.
Okay. Yeah. And is the site already plumbed for recycled water use for landscaping, or is that another step in the process?
That's a good question. I mean, I know there's recycled water out there. There's no landscaping, I think.
Okay.
It's just the actual station to get water. I mean, it's easy.
Oh, so they get tap into that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's.
You might need to repeat that from this.
I'm sorry.
If you could just repeat hers.
I can repeat that. There's already recycled water there that can be tapped into for the landscaping. There's talks about relocating the already public service there provided.
Just on that theme, I wanted to add that we are also planning to recapture rainwater and use it for plumbing fixtures to the extent we can.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of piping that we need to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
You just get the water from the roof and pipe them into the fixtures.
Okay. Also, regarding the operating hours, is this like the only times that the center would allowed to be open? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the lease term sheet. So the reason why I'm asking, so if it has to close at 10 and there's maybe like night sky programming or stargazing, meteor watching kind of thing, and the event's going to happen at 1 a.m, does that mean you guys wouldn't be able to have an event for that?
So the operating hours are a balance of trying to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, but also trying to expand and deliver our programs. So we came to what we thought was an equitable solution in early discussions with the city of what appropriate hours would be. Would we love to have more hours for that specific type reason? Yes, but that's not what's in the proposal currently. So I think we would have to find some alternative location, or maybe through this process, through the city's review, that could be expanded. But right now, that's what we've come up with as a compromise of a reasonable solution.
I think it would be good if you could have the option to be able to maybe apply for special event permitting or something like that. And, maybe the city has to okay it per basis or something like that. And then I had a question about the taxes. The tenant is going to have to pay property taxes, and I was wondering if one of you guys over there could share what the city pays for property taxes.
Terry McClendon-Horder, it's a little out of our bailiwick because the county assesses property tax, but I believe city-owned properties are tax exempt, and I can verify that. Property tax exempt.
So it would still be owned by the city,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a tenant in there, so would that still be tax exempt?
Non-profit, but we can follow up with that. It's really a little bit beyond our knowledge base.
That was something that came up during the negotiations of the term sheet. I think Mr. Cooper is correct in that the city does not pay property tax. It's tax exempt. We are a nonprofit, but that caveat was put in there in case there was some sort of taxing that the county would assess upon the city, that we would be responsible for it. We're hoping that's not the case, but it was the city's way of protecting themselves from any sort of tax we might generate by doing activity there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that concludes my questions. Thank you. We do have another question from Commissioner Artis.
Yeah, actually, on the property tax thing, I haven't dealt with Napa County, but an organization can apply for exemption, and I have done that in numerous counties, so that is possible to get out of that situation. But also, just out of curiosity, what is your hope, your goal for start of construction and completion? What does that timeline look like in your best scenario or your world at this time?
Tomorrow, no. No, we're hoping to be able to break ground by the end of next year. That would be, that's our hopes and dreams. So the process that we're undergoing right now, just for next steps, is right now our project application is submitted to the city, and that'll go through this body and then on to Planning Commission. And then after that, we have a design permit. And then after that, we would go through the process of construction documents and public bid and all of that. So all of that is time intensive, even if we were fully funded right now, and we're not fully funded. So we're playing this balancing act of going after funding while also making sure that we're trying to get the project as close to shovel ready as possible so that it's really attractive to funders. So within the next 2 years, for sure, we'd like to break ground. If we could do it by the end of next year, that would be great. Also, the city's in the process of moving out of the site, so that takes time, and that's a big move for them as well. So.
And the only other thing I'd add is we have also designed this project to be feasible. So in the off chance that we're not able to secure all the funding in one fell swoop, we can start it and do kind of it in logical increments and not disturb, and at least get some services there, and then keep adding on as more funding comes available. So we have that plan also in mind and have that in our back pocket.
All right. Are there any public comments on this item?
There are no comments online, and I have received no written comments.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I think we're all looking forward to this.
Thank you. A quick shout out, we do have an Ecology Center website that was just launched about a month ago. So if you haven't checked it out, it's NapaRiverEcologyCenter.org. So it's got our site plans on it as well as a little more information about it. So So there is a reference, and we imagine it'll continue to grow and as the project grows. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle.
Okay, are there any management and staff updates?
I have none.
Neither do I.
I don't remember seeing this agenda item before. Is this a new thing? No, it's always there. All right. Well, the meeting is adjourned at 8:30.